Hi, welcome everyone with another artist talk as a part of Shame Shouldn't Be a Symptom exhibition that we at Improper Walls prepared in collaboration with the Foundation Made of Millions as our contribution to the Mental Health Awareness Month. And today, as our guest, we have an artist, Mariana Rebola. Welcome, Mariana. And I will just shortly introduce that Mariana is a Portuguese artist and art sociology student and a magazine editor. After her bachelor in painting from the Faculty of Fine Arts of Porto and a master in visual arts from the LUCA School of Arts in Gent, her work has taken an intimate female approach as a reflection of both one's surroundings and a personal maturing process by making use of visual metaphors through multiple visual media such as video, printmaking, collage, and painting. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And today we will talk more about topics like shame that concerns like position of a female artist and sexual harassment. So maybe let's dive right in with your artwork that is featured in our exhibition, and that's a bigger project titled Cornered. And we are exhibiting a big print, which like a print of an image that belongs to a video performance that reflects on a space as a shelter, but at the same time as a space of punishment.
Yeah.
And maybe you could tell us more about the artwork and what is behind it and what is the relationship of a shame toward this.
Sure. So yeah, as you said, like the work is like a still frame from a performance I did maybe I think more or less 1.5 to 2 years ago when I studied still in Ghent, and most of the project was made like through mediums of photography and printmaking. And then in the end, I had to do some adjustments because precisely I was having some like pressure, let's say like that, of like harassment in the school to not complete my project as I planned. And that's actually how the main video and also this print, how they came about, because I just had to find solutions like through the problems that I was having. And yeah, I mean, the print is really big. And even though it's like a body cornered in space, I do feel like the magnitude of it does have this impact of how involving this kind of loneliness and despair can feel. Even if a person is kind of like trying to protect their own body and just create a secure space. Yeah, it can be very overwhelming, and it can really tame like your position in life and your mindset for a certain time. That's kind of how I was feeling at the time. And though it was conceptualized back then, I only exhibited right now because of all the problems that were going on and so on.
Thank you. Yeah, and this is exactly the topic that you reflect on in other works as well, about this shame concerning the body image, and like it's really this like additional stigma of being a female artist because of stereotypes about like a female's position within the artwork. And you are also studying art sociology, so could you maybe tell us more like how this theoretical studies maybe come to play, like how it maybe change your perception, or did you find that maybe the theory is more like even like making it worse for
yeah. Okay, big question. Yeah, indeed, like the shame and this kind of like hiding and showing off the body are pretty much like how I associate it to the main theme of this exhibition. However, I generally feel like, for example, the nude, and especially the female nude, doesn't have to be necessarily sexual. I mean, it really doesn't have to be sexualized, even though it has been for like centuries, and it has been always or mostly shown through like a voyeuristic eye, like an outsider kind of working over someone's image. And I feel that's where my work is also rather different, because I do explore my own image. I can cut it. I can kind of it's not very flattering sometimes, but it's about like the limits of the body and going beyond that. And to a certain level also exhaustion. And of course, this also connects theoretically to just womanhood experiences and maturing as a person that can have a lot of problems, like in the public space or in the public eye, just because of being somewhat free or trying to achieve a more at ease existence, I guess, and a very an assertive existence. So my thesis back then was concerned with like women artists and their lives and their artwork, if there was any relationship to it or not. Not necessarily very academic, but more like following different female artists and seeing how they reflected on this or not, or how they ignored it, because there are also like a lot of women from, for example, expressionist painting that really don't, they try to not care about feminist movements and so on. And then I thought like the sociology master now would make sense. But I started noticing that quite often in these academic settings, these themes are approached in an objective way, or trying to be very objective. Again, it's quite male dominated, so it's also a bit hard to tell how well things are represented, because if you are like a person that is external to the problems all the time and kind of barely talking to the people in question, also in terms of, for example, neo-colonial studies, quite often people don't know the language of the places, or they haven't really experienced it. And it started being quite frustrating, because it's like revolving on these themes a lot, themes that are very problematic, very traumatic. And then again, just talking about it like very at ease and in this scientific way, when it's not really scientific. It affects people very deeply. And that's the main problem I've been having in the past year of doing this master. It's very conflicting with how I feel, or how I feel these situations that we try to solve sociologically are not actually treated. I mean, it delves into psychology as well, and dealing with our own mental problems and so on. So it's not such an objective scientific thing to address.
Mm-hmm. What do you think might like help to help academia to like go into better direction?
I mean, I'm super young, and I don't know if I have any big saying on this. And if it's working for most people in academia, then I guess it's okay. But I feel like the dismissal of more subjective empirical statements and experiences is quite a problem. Like, for example, there's also this problem between like quantitative research, which is like surveys and just like this big data, versus the individual experience, which is always, because it's subjective, it's hard to quantify and it's hard to take into account. And whenever there are like odd cases, they're just dismissed from the statistics. And then it's not really representing reality at all, because a lot of cases are just thrown off the equation. So for me, I guess it's more maybe this local in-depth approach where people are taken for their words, and not necessarily just for like big political measures or so on, but a more attentive look and support when these situations are really happening, just a more connected, interconnected approach. Also with other disciplines, also with literature, with art making, things that are proved to help people mentally and in terms of like surpassing certain traumas and so on. But they are not usually considered because they are a bit like blurry lines and
And talking about male-dominated academic world, what is your experience with this like sexual harassment within? Because this is quite like common thing in universities in general, and I think we can say that somehow these art schools have it even maybe like worse.
yeah.
So
I don't know how it is, for example, in Austria. Like in Portugal, I didn't notice that badly either, but maybe I'm missing some situations. But I remember, I was super shocked to have this situation going on in Ghent. It was me and other people that underwent like sexual harassment from the same person. There were some more teachers in the same school that had the same behavior or misbehavior. But the school kind of tried to like put it under the carpet a lot to not affect their PR and their image, their public image. And from when I moved to the Netherlands now, there were also some like very blatant situations like that. And again, a kind of like dismissal or not because I feel like when it happens, it's not necessarily the fault of the institution, but once they know there's something there has to be done, and that person is not safe to work with, they cannot keep like teaching young, in this case, like young women, if they're going to like every year arrest a few. I think it's quite clear, but I remember that it didn't seem so clear to the head of my school. And apart from that, like even in studio visits and so on, it can really happen that some male older artists take it in another way. Um, and then it's very hard to prove that something happened or not. Like I've also had an experience like that, and you kind of like you just want to run away from it and carry on your life, but it can affect you kind of long term. And I do think that indeed it happens more. Maybe it happens a lot in arts, just because the relationships from like mentors and students or young artists are a bit closer than in other fields, where sometimes it's more clear, like what are the procedures, what is the correct approach to talk with a younger person without seeming like without having other intentions. Yeah, but I don't really know if there's any solution to it except that men should stop doing it. And I mean, I've also heard from women, but yeah, mostly. Yeah.
But like as you said, the school tried to like keep quiet about it, and was there even like some like repercussions for the person, or was it
Yeah.
just like?
Yeah, eventually got fired, but it was like throughout the summer, like during vacations. And I remember that the main at first, because it was all how do you say, anonymous complaints, even though it was a few for the same person, they thought that an intense talk would be enough to fix the situation. The person would never do it again. And then I really had to, by chance, I met the head of the school and the head of the group of universities in a final exhibition, and we had a talk, and I had to make this point where like, how would you trust this man to be working if your daughter came here, or your friend, some female friend came to this school? Like, this is not a safe environment, even if you had this talk. And especially like I had to keep working while this guy was still working all the time, and he was not very stable in terms of reactions. So it was quite stressy, and they just didn't seem to get it really. So that was quite frustrating, but eventually it went for the best. I just know that cases like this do keep happening in the Belgian art scene. Like there's there are some organizations that are dealing with all these cases with protests and so on, and trying to make a proper change by calling them to action, but it doesn't seem like it's going as it should for a civilized country, supposedly. Yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting. Can you maybe like do you have some insight into why it might be like so specific to the region? Because for example, I'm from like Eastern European country, so it's like it came somehow like more naturally that this like very patriarchal environment is present there, because it's like very region wise. But it's a bit surprising for me. But I also have that knowledge that in this like Belgium, Netherlands region is like quite a common.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's weird because it does feel like we always talk about Northern Europe, Northern Europe as some of the supposedly most organized and proper countries. But then I do feel that sometimes some problems kind of like slip under the radar, because everything should be going on so well. Why I really like, are these really problems, or it's just like people like making random claims, or being too annoyed about little things? And I think then this dismissive attitude can turn into the opposite, where it fosters these very unpleasant situations to keep happening. I wouldn't say, I mean, there is much worse, but that's not, it's just when an environment should be safe, like a school or a work, there should be no acceptance for this at all. But it's hard. Yeah, it was very surprising for me as well. Also, Portugal is more, I would also say it's more patriarchal and more conservative with those like family values and whatnot. But I don't think people would do it that blatantly, or at least I haven't experienced. Or we have other things like harassment in the streets and so on. But yeah.
And is it because, like, for example, in my country is more about like really a cultural thing that is like very normal. And so it's very hard to even like claim this at school, because it's like that kind of behavior, it's considered like very, like it's very normalized. But is it in these countries at least taken like into account that, okay, this is not okay, like we are trying to pretend that it's not happening and like keep quiet about it, but is it at least like considered, like is it acknowledged that it is wrong?
In some situations, not really, because imagine if it's someone like quite famous that is exhibiting in institutions and so on. There just seems to be a brotherhood, like it's between. It's generally like these institutions are also ruled by men, and they can be very like, oh, that person is like making crazy claims, or this isn't based on anything. So they keep showing in like highly prestigious art institutions and working in highly prestigious art institutions, while being protected by their peers. Because I remember even when I told this case, like even teachers were like, oh, I'm so shocked, I cannot help you because this is so shocking for me. And I'm like, yeah, it's also shocking and messed up for me. Like, but anyway, I do think is there is this protection, inner protection in a certain circle, a bit higher in arts, that sometimes makes it very hard to also prosecute or take any of these claims seriously. Yeah, and it can be specific around here. I don't know, like I was also a foreigner, so maybe I wasn't having the access or the channels that I should. Yeah. But for example, here in the Netherlands, there is this idea, and everyone says it like at first, we're very tolerant and we're very equal. But then, I mean, also if you look at like sociological statistics and so on, there's still like inequality everywhere. And these cases quite often are not even reported or so. So it can be something that these countries do use as like a flag, or like they would say it to your face, but it's not necessarily what's going on behind.
Yes, that's very true. Also, with this like illusion of these countries being like very ecological, and the truth many times is that they are just doing their dirty business that they wouldn't be allowing in their country. They are just doing it in other countries.
Yeah,
You know,
also
when
that,
the legislation is not so.
Yeah, even
So it's really not that the countries wouldn't be so developed.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are having a bit of connection issues, so I apologize if there are like some freezings happening. But back to the topic, was it at least like noticed some kind of change or like a shift in this approach, like within the recent years, as like the whole society started to approaching like more into acknowledging like of this behavior of being like very toxic, and started to like take people accountable?
From my perspective, I think so. There's more awareness to it, and people are also tired that this happens like every generation, and it doesn't make any sense. But that, yeah, I would say for sure there is a quite a difference, but I don't know. It's not finalized. It's not like any work is achieved in just reaching this fully safe space for everyone. And of course, I'm talking mostly about women, typical women issues, but it can be for anything, like just for a person to be more expressive. Yeah, just have a different appearance, have a different situation in terms of just physical abilities or any sort of abilities. And sometimes they can be mocked, or they. And I do feel like these problems still come up, and it can be quite a struggle to be fully accepted and work properly without this misdemeanor, these misconceptions happening. But I do think there's been a difference. But and even like statistically, if I go back to the sociological field, there has been a difference for the best. Yeah, it's still frustrating though. That's my only counterpoint.
Yeah, well, anyway, I think it's still kind of a long way to go.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is also still this like very fetishized position of a woman in art world, as we mentioned already in the beginning. And one of your other works is dealing with exactly these stereotypes and like how to even like choose to which one like struggle with at a given time. Can you tell us more, some like a bit more about this artwork and about this like a different inner struggles?
Yeah. I don't know which one it is in specific, but I've made use of yeah, the cliches of women. I have one which is also like about women giving themselves like as a present, and then you can use like these more fetishized images of women, or in other cases just I have some like collages with other women artists works or imagery, and just kind of being a more of a blob body instead of one of, it's sometimes hard to tell in my work like what exactly am I doing in the still images, which I find is a plus, because then it's not so much about like the figure or the it's not even about like a sexual commentary mostly. But it does happen that most men looking at my work will say it is erotic, like every time. And I understand some of them, yes, but not all. And it can be a bit deflating that that's just the first, yeah, the main thing that people take from it. Um, but I've heard, for example, from women that it can be seen as more of a body positive kind of work, which sounds better, but at the same time, um, I would hope that we would all be at a comfortable point with our bodies, like not that it has to fit any sort of um, stereotypical image, like mine also doesn't. But it's I wish there was more than that as well, in the sense that yeah, there was already a comfort with people within themselves to not necessarily just see that. But still, if it helps people, that's good as well. Sorry, I may have
Yeah.
drifted from the
Yeah, no. I'm just like really having a bit connection issues, so I hope I'm not like overhearing something. But yeah, what I was referring to mainly with this question was the exhaustion works, the collages, about this like where to choose the struggle of being like a woman as a muse, or as this like you called it background whore, and
yeah,
that is like a very like this additional pressure that a woman experiences when studying art or creating art,
yeah,
that usually men don't experience, because
yeah,
it's like both positions like brings certain struggles, but this is always this like additional that in the first place you need to defend your place as a creator, and then to like strip off this another pressure of like being this representative of a whole group,
yeah.
and just
Yeah,
like
exactly.
being as a person of your own. So
But I do feel like in our mindset, like this is kind of breeded ever since we're kids, right? That we get socialized for these particular views of ourselves. So even when we're putting out work, like it can be quite hard. Or I mean, there have been like quite a few movements, feminist movements, where this is deconstructed. But still, for a young person, it can be quite hard to like not think about how appealing you look visually if you're using your body as a performative tool, or just being super comfortable with your body if you're doing something more nude or so. So that struggle also came up. But then because of the external situation that I was undergoing, where I couldn't do any sort of other work because yeah, this guy was like preventing me from doing other work. I was like, yeah, I have to. But I still remember that I'm quite often not necessarily comfortable with the how my body or how I may look in certain works that I do, especially when they're like more raw or more suggestive, and just not fitting that ideal, the female ideal, the beauty standards and so on. But then it just has to come out anyway, because it's like I think about it and I debunk that myth at the same time, like, oh, this is stupid, and just grow from that. Yeah.
Yeah, and like talking again about the shame and this like additional pressure on mental health, let's say, like is it like that because like when doing an artwork and a very like intimate artwork, and as you already said that when there is like a woman like expressing herself through her naked body is like always at least partially perceived as erotic,
Yeah.
which then for example like defending the artwork like within the finals is like can be like a very challenging, let's say, like or like in general like this additional issues concerning being a female artist. Is it like I don't know, like that would you say that it really does have an impact on mental health?
It can. But it depends on a lot on how, with whom we surround ourselves. Like for example, if I go back to my hometown, I feel like way more constricted because there is a sort of view or image that has been made of me by people that I've known throughout the years. That maybe it's quite different as these works come up, or it can be clashing. And then that kind of social pressure does make me more insecure and probably more ashamed to show certain work, even with my parents, like being from a kind of Catholic conservative backgrounds. It's not well taken at all, and that can be very stressful because it's not only that you're making the efforts for yourself to figure out your questions throughout your work, figure out what media makes sense for to pass out a certain message. So you have all those insecurities plus just kind of can I say it, when yeah, just being like a little bit looked down by the people that should be close to you. But when people, I do feel that it's super important that we surround ourselves with like loving friends and more accepting people, more open-minded. Like if we do see that some people are not working in our favor, be it in, and this sounds okay, this sounds very like capitalist in a sense, that's not what I mean. And working in our favor as in supportive, like a supportive group where we all cooperate, we all share nice ideas with each other, we all make each other grow positively. Or even we can also like clash in certain themes, but just have constructive discussions and things that are really feeding into each other instead of the opposite, where someone is trying to put you down or so. I think that's super important to overcome this potential shame and self-isolation that can come from struggling situations. Yeah, but indeed it does have an impact, like how, yeah, these constructed ideas, even that basic thoughts that sex sells. So and then always connecting sex to nudity, and that's the instant judgment that comes, and then also like selling, but for how much? Also with OnlyFans and things like that, it's quite an interesting phenomenon that people are just kind of taking, in a way, control of their image and this perception that sex sells, but then also there's a constant judgment of it and like very negative judgment usually. Yeah.
Because this is for me another like interesting layer, because we are also doing this exhibition in a way that it's like the art is a natural tool to like express the things that we might be ashamed of talking about, or like live in other ways, and art is that tool to express it safely, or like in a like more safe way. But within this framework, like looking at this from this perspective, it on the other hand carries like additional shame, and it constricts you even more from this position.
Yeah.
And I think like this interesting paradox.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it can come to a very liberated point, but in the beginning I do feel it can be, it's like self-forcing yourself to go there and also maybe getting some backlash. But if it's really like the work that makes sense at a certain point for whatever reason, then you just have to do it anyway, because yeah, it's like pouring out of you. Then whatever backlash comes, you still feel like you'll go through that because it's more, it's kind of like noise in the background. But yeah, it can be quite some pressure, but maybe eventually it reaches a point of like more comfort and also of emancipation, like even in terms of realizing what your body can do or not in terms of movements, or in terms of, yeah, like it can go more glamorous than just the more nude, simple things that I do. And that can be super expensive, I feel, at a certain point when we're like, yeah, stripping ourselves from a lot of things that we have learned about shame and what we should show or not. Yeah.
So do you think that, like now speaking about this mental health awareness, if there would be more awareness on like, because mental health issues can be like close tied to the image and like issues with this like idolization. If there would be more awareness on this topic, would also like the position of female artists or like in this academic world like change somehow, like in a positive way, hopefully? Or do you think it's not like connected? Like what I'm asking maybe is like if it would be different for women to like be maybe like less cornered if there would be like more awareness on the mental health, and maybe like they would initially struggle less with their own like self-expression.
Maybe, yeah, because the main thing is that the main paradigms in also in arts, but also in sciences, are this rational, pulled together individual that is performing somewhat kind of objective work, or very defined work. I would say. So, for example, an artist that has a clear line starts selling better from the beginning because it's not deviating from himself and from. And for example, in academic research, also, like, you can never put yourself as a subject there. You cannot necessarily give this input. And this is very much a construction, because it's not like we can detach ourselves from like our emotions and our issues, our history. Or at least it's like a very forced effort that for me also in some way relates to a kind of like stoic masculinity ideal that I feel has prevailed through this sense of like mind over matter, and get a grip on yourself, don't be hysterical, and so on. But I've also heard from men that this is quite a burden, and like if we all live like this, it's quite a burden. It can be very stressful, and it just puts like a lot of pressure on you every day to not feel your feelings, to not be really honest. So not only to be nice for women for using the binary to be taken, yeah, to not be dismissed because of some issues, or anything, any sort of problem that might intervene in the work, or be taken into the work. But it would also be nice for men, for everyone in between, to just channel more, be more honest about what they're feeling when they're feeling it. Sometimes it can be too much, like can be overwhelming, and only like through therapy or heavier psychological support, psychotherapy, only through that we can maybe really reach out to the roots of why we behave the ways that we do, or why we can be triggered by certain things and other people might not. Yeah, but I think it will be broadly helpful, not only for women, really. Maybe we actually already might be more accepting of these nuances and this broader spectrum of action, then people have more this macho attitude. They're just kind of like repressing it or so.
Yeah, of course, because like this toxic masculinity is toxic for men, as like it's regardless gender spectrum, because it's like we all suppress then the feminine parts that we all have, like we all embody this. So like, yeah, but this is for me again like interesting point that this like better mental health awareness could like I think very positively affect also many other issues that are like, or many other like social phenomena existing like right now, as sexual harassment, for example, because if women or men wouldn't be like entering the situation with this like already weakened state, somehow maybe it would be like easier to like break out of this like toxic environments and
yeah it's just, yeah, it's the misconception that this, because for me, if you're not fully accessing I mean, the more you're stopping yourself from doing and feeling, it, for me, those are weaknesses, they're not strengths, but like paradoxically, they're seen as strengths in most fields. And that's the part that I feel it's like super dystopic. But yeah, I guess it's like still very apparent in, yeah, most fields, like through society.
Yeah, and now getting back to your work is like your art practice is very closely tied to like literature and theoretical work, is not just by you studying the sociology now, but also like referencing other writers and authors in your works. Can you maybe like share some of your favorite artists or writings or like a school of thoughts that
Sure.
influenced you?
Sure. I mean, I think also from the time that I conceptualized this work and made that thesis, it was mostly focused, as I said, on female artists. I do try to focus mostly on female authors. Also, from the moment I realized that most, for example, most literature classics, most books people will have on shelves, most books on bookshops, they're all by male authors still. Um, or maybe, I don't know, maybe in the cooking section or some like very stereotypical sections you'll see more females, but most consider like people that are considered good artists, they are men. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, then, but surely there is more to read. And I started broadening up not only from male authors but from the wide western male author. So I would say generally my literary references would be in that sense. I have some here because I'm sometimes with a very bad memory, so I wrote some down for literature. For artists, it can vary through time. But for literature, what people I'm very into right now are Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, wait, Virginia Woolf, Chris Cross, Janet Winterson, and then I mean also some men. Fernando Pessoa, it's always my favorite Portuguese poet. Like I think everyone should read him. Michel Foucault, Susan Sontag. I really like her diaries as well. Like once this kind of shiny surface breaks to a more honest approach. Toni Morrison. I think it's a lot already. um, yeah,
Yeah,
but
thank you. Thank you for sharing. I already signed up for your literary newsletter.
yeah,
I'm very much looking forward for the next edition. Can you maybe like tell more about what people, including me, can like look forward for the
yeah.
next round?
So I think my last one was precisely about this myth of the objective knowledge, and I mean it's always subjective, so don't take my word for sure. But it was about that, and then I was thinking also about the bridges between neo-colonial uh, paternalist attitudes and I can't remember. That was my starting point, and and knowledge as because for example sometimes some authors are considered very complicated to read, and because of that they're also taken out of the academia mainstream ones, and or they are not so popular as well. And I find it so peculiar because it's like maybe sometimes they know more things and they try to add to there's denser knowledge, but then we can also not reach it because it's too much, in a sense that can always be considered like irrational even though it's just the extreme rational. I don't know, it's something in between those lines, but it's not really defined yet. And I always try to refer a bit to literature, like novels as much as, no, but mostly nonfiction. But it can go to like sociological writings, diaristic entries. I don't know.
Is someone from your like recent favorites or in general like discussing this topic of mental health maybe, or at least the shame as
No, I recently met a friend, and that's how this came about. Because she also showed me some authors within sociology and history, neo-colonial studies that I didn't know. And then she's like, yeah, it's crazy because they're actually like very proper authors, but maybe because they're from India, they're a bit stigmatized. They're not referred in the Western literature, yeah, just the references. And yeah, that's how it came about. But there isn't, I don't know, sometimes there is no clear trigger to things. It just blends in from situations, like everyday situations. But I really love writing, so that's why I started it, because of my bad memory, I need to organize my readings, especially since COVID. Like I barely see any exhibitions, to be honest, because also there weren't many except online, at least here in the Netherlands. And then I just read more, and it starts kind of, you can also visualize a lot from reading. Like for me, as you said, it's very important for most of my work to have this thoughtful experience behind it, and it's usually made through words, metaphors. But it can be lost if I don't put it down. And then I thought, like, yeah, why not send it? I think more people might like also some things that I read. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm very much hooked up. So I'm very happy for new input.
Yeah.
But you are also editor of a magazine, so maybe you could maybe you could introduce the magazine and what is it like focused on, and is it also in print? I think not just online.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, we started 3 years ago in Portugal. Some friends and I started the magazine because we were feeling that exhibition CV was always too important for how people started or not in the art world, and also the nepotist game in the background. So we're like, oh, we know some cool people, but they're not very invested in this in playing this artistic game. So we just wish there would be like a publication or some platform to show these works, and create like new relationships between their works, and just have some sort of like more informal platform to get in contact with each other. And indeed, it has a printed version and an online version. The online, we try to have work that is more for digital platforms and viewing, like video or so. And the printed, of course, it's on paper, so people have to take that a bit into consideration. We started then, I think 2 editions ago, started working through open calls, because also our circle is still in a way not fully open. We only know the people that we know, but maybe there are like more interesting works that we don't know. Portugal is small, but still. And right now we're also taking some international applications for it, which we do consider, though our main focus from the beginning was the Portuguese emerging art scene, but not only emerging. Imagine if an artist is older, but also is not very involved in the art world as we commonly know it, that would also be interesting to show. Yes. I don't know. Oh, we also have podcasts, but they are in Portuguese. And we also have newsletters that we write rotatively, like the other co-editors and I. And it's been a very nice experience, yes. We hope that we can do some more exhibitions in the future as well, because we also curate through our network now. So hopefully after the COVID, everything, it will be a bit more active in that sense.
Sounds very interesting. And the magazine is also in Portuguese, right? As I noticed online that the texts are.
Some are, yeah. So essentially, we don't do much editing. It functions more as an open space. Like imagine it to be a gallery space, and we just, at the point that we accept the artists from their portfolio or visual references they send, then we just give them the free pages to do whatever they want. So we don't really write about. That was also a thing. We didn't want to like write too much about it, not use like the typical artistic jargon or just harder to reach words that sometimes put people off having some sort of aesthetic or visual experience. So it's literally just what the artists do, which can be, from my experience, I've also realized that can be a little bit hermetic, as in, why I've heard this from people that maybe are outside of arts, like, why should I get this? Like, I don't really, why should I spend some time looking at this when I can't really understand it? There isn't a proper explanation. But then I think that might tell more about the general cultural setting in Portugal, which is very devalued, and just generally people don't think it is serious work, or don't understand that actually most artists work about everyone's problems. Like we generally take our references from everyday life, like everyone, and there can be quite a critical view of things coming out from that. Also, most artists, like they also work in other, like Portugal is not really the same financial setting as, for example, the Netherlands or Belgium, where there seems to be way more support and funding. It's not like a fluctuating romantic state. But there seem to be some misconceptions in Portugal still about these things. And through the magazine, I've encountered this, but at the same time, I feel it can be quite refreshing to have like many different interpretations of what is being presented without forcing a specific view, and yeah, just selling the people through like their CV and so on. So that's why we don't have that much text. Actually, it could be international, unless the artists do use text, and then it's probably in Portuguese. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because this, I was interested in if one of your focus is maybe to like introduce Portuguese artists like to more international audience.
Mm.
But if you say that there is not so much text, then it can be taken
We've
more
thought
international.
we've tried at an early stage in the magazine. The thing is that every project like gets more solid the more time you do it, right? So at first it wasn't super well taken abroad, or like it's kind of a collectible item, I would say. So it makes sense, even though it's not very expensive, and so it just makes more sense if you also know the people that are showing, that are the artists maybe being represented there, and from your circle. Or it can be like exciting if you also get in there. And in that sense, I've realized it can be hard to make it international so much, but we are open for international applications nonetheless. But it does make sense in the Portuguese scene. But I mean, I've sold also some magazines here, like I've shown it to some friends and some people around. But it's for sure settled in Porto, and that this localism also makes sense for us, I guess. That's partially a reason why I'll probably go back to Portugal, because I'm missing out on all the events that we do, and just the more interconnective part, the more personal contact. And at some point I realized, just Zoom is not making it.
Yeah, true. So this answered a bit my like maybe even last question, as we are reaching the full hour.
Yeah.
Soon, like what is your what are your plans like next in some like recent, like I don't know, projects maybe, or like really this going back to Porto and focus on art scene there?
Yeah, I don't have a specific, for example, for exhibitions and so on in specific right now. I don't know. I was supposed to finish my master now, the sociology management one, but then postponed my thesis for a bit, and trying to find a job in Portugal right now. But at the same time, I really missed farming there. Like I have back in my hometown, we have a piece of land in the back, and also in another smaller village nearby, where, for example, my grandparents were farmers, and I've lived a little bit with that when I was younger. And I started from being in these more civilized countries, supposedly. It's just a big realization that you need money for everything. Like rent here is more expensive, food is more expensive, so it does force you to get into this structure, this quite pushy structure, in the sense, if you want to keep doing art, you still need to have like quite a properly paid job to keep up with these basics. And I do miss that in Portugal some things are cheaper, especially if they grow literally from the sun and land. And sorry, this sounds very hippie of me, but yeah, I want to be more connected to that also, because it's part of my father still farms as well, more as a hobby, but it's quite a good production in the summer. We get like super nice vegetables and everything. And it'd be interesting to see if this is combinable with some sort of artistic residency, or just like providing different settings for people to live in, and kind of sustain themselves a little bit. I still don't have any concrete plans. We'll see. I know some more people that are interested in this in terms of also reviving rural areas in Portugal instead of just a centralized urban spaces focused on Lisbon and Porto. So that I've been thinking about that, but it's still up in space. And then I want to write more and yeah, keep doing art, I guess. But I'll need to figure out still need to find a proper job anyway. That will take some time from the more enjoyable artistic thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always the struggle how to create and survive at the same time.
Yeah, I do want to visit Vienna too, because I lived there in the past and I loved it very much. But now with the traveling restrictions, it was a bit difficult.
Yeah, that's true. But for sure, stop by at the Improper Walls once you manage to get here. We are always very happy to meet all the artists in person. Now the situation is a bit complicated, so so yeah, I think we get through all the topics. If there is nothing that you would like to add, maybe, or to like where people can sign up for the newsletter, or like just
Yeah, probably through
keep
my
an eye on your work.
probably through my Instagram, if it is connected to anything, which I think it is, to some publications. I have a link on my bio that's where you can either sign up for the newsletter or just follow what might be coming up artistically, or just check the portfolio. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for talking.
Very nice.
For talking with me tonight. And at the same time, I would like to invite everyone. We will have a finissage of this exhibition next week on Wednesday, after we, or during even our last talk. And it will be the therapy talk with psychoanalyst Daniela Kammerer. So save the date and stop by at Improper Walls, because we're very happy that we can finally be open again for in-person visits. So just bring your masks and get tested, please, before, and hopefully we'll all have a safe fun. Thank you everyone for watching, and see you